And if your ears are not busted from that, they will be, because we are the Roto Hackers podcast, and my name is Judah Boot. I'm here with AJ Herschel, the kid, and it's Jared, and we are the Roto Hacker podcasters. We are your unauthorized source of fantasy football information and entertainment and just all around goodness. So, guys, how's everything going?
Not bad.
I have a car dilemma that I don't know if readers want to hear about, or
a car
readers,
or
not readers. Sorry, I just flash back to my old newspaper days. Yeah. I mean, we could have some people that just mute all of us and read it in subtitles or whatever. Yeah. So I've had a 2005 Mustang for 15 years.
Nice.
I got it brand new. And I've definitely gotten my, money's worth out of it and everything. It's got nearly 263,000 miles on it, all this stuff. So it's been great. It's crazy to think like how many different like life changes, job changes, moves, cross country trips, all these things.
It's like an old friend.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. But it's been like, at this point where it's starting to mount little problems and then not so little problems. And so I got my reverse gear, like I started having a transmission issue to where, reverse didn't want to reverse. And so then it finally has just gone out completely. So I have no reverse. It still drives fun. It still drives fun. And, if like I still, just I'm driving around town like usual, because I just have to make sure wherever I go, like to pull through like the parking space into the next parking space in front. So I'm facing out so I don't have to back up. But so it's time. I don't want it like, it would cost, $1,000. I mean, the car basically has no value other than sentimental value at this point. It's got very little actual monetary value. So I don't know if I want to pay $1,000+ to get like a used transmission put in or something like that and try to extend it a little bit longer, especially with all the other problems it has, or, just kind of finally upgrade to something else. Although that's not particularly ideal at the time either, considering that I'm, laid off and, who knows, like, I don't think it'll take me all that long to find another job. I'd had freelance work up until the last couple of weeks, so I haven't really been looking that hard, but I need to start looking harder. But so that's kind of my dilemma is, do I go ahead and bite the bullet and get a new one, or do I sink $1,000 or so into something that's really pretty close to the end of its life anyway. So,
well, how much do you need a car during COVID? Have you been using it a lot? Do you have to get around a lot?
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is I don't necessarily have to have something right now, but like when I inevitably change jobs, or even if I don't even know how the job interview process works right now. Like, are people doing Zoom interviews more, or what? But if they're doing in-person interviews, then I'm most likely going to have to, I'm in a rural area and I'm almost certainly going to have to move for my next job. So, do I want to be dealing with, like car issues, as I'm like trying to, maybe work out either job interviews or a move and really a move. So that's the other thing too. So yeah, it's not terribly inconvenient because I'm not really driving that much, and the places I go, I can, work it out to
but a car is a car. It's like, yeah, you don't want to be a ship. You don't want to be a sailor without a ship, right? Like,
right.
That's tough.
Yeah. So,
well, you know what? We're going to give all the earnings that we get from RotoHack.
right. Well, hey, I thought I would just throw it out there in case we have some like rich and wealthy viewer that's like, oh my gosh, what a nice young man. I enjoy his podcast so much, and I don't want this to be something that impedes. I want his mind to be entirely focused on being an absolute stud at fantasy football, and then therefore being able to dole out studly advice to listeners. I mean,
might be worth it, guys.
What's it? I lose nothing by throwing this out there.
Well, speaking of which, Ryan, and
welcome back.
He's the sugar daddy. Come on, Ryan, you know it. He says, are we going to talk about how I killed that last mock draft?
He did do pretty well.
Did he?
Yeah,
I got a whopping D-. That's my go-to.
I was tremendously amused by the fact that I drafted like 3 or 4 players, and then my connection, finally did break, and I was still middle of the pack.
Yeah. Well, I got a B and finished in 4th. So
yeah, you were a couple of spots ahead of me.
Yeah, I was happy with my team.
You went all the way to the end with Ryan, right?
Yeah, we went all the way. Yeah, he and I and Math Quest I think was also there till the end. Yeah, nice. And Ben was in the chat. I'm pretty sure till the end. So yeah, we had a couple people hang in there.
Although keep it, I don't want to like throw cold water on Ryan's fire here, but it is sort of like the mock draft equivalent, the draft equivalent of preseason. It's like, do preseason results really count? Like,
oh, now you're talking about that,
right?
5 weeks ago, you're all, I got it in.
Got a number 1.
Look, let me go ahead and welcome you to the year 2020, where you don't have to have any kind of consistent standards for your thought process. So
this is my year. This is my year.
This is your year. This is your year. Yeah, 100%.
Luke Ojeda. Luke Ojeda says, y'all going to do a podcast instead of watching the hockey game?
My man, let's go.
Are the Wolves playing?
That hurt me, Judah Buddha, when you said that. Blackhawks, man. We're down 3-1 to Vegas. Game 5 tonight, man.
Dude, who the heck cares about hockey? All right. Ben says,
Welcome back.
The new news.
All right.
So there is some news out there. Should we just get right up on into it?
I'm out of car stories, so yeah.
News in the NFL today.
Biggest news out there before Judah Buddha says anything. We've got 1 spot left in the Roto Hackers listener league.
Oh yeah.
And Luca Ojeda, you're here. You're here. We need to get him the link somewhere.
I see you up there. I see your eyeballs looking at us. I will get you the link right now. By the way, I've been thinking a lot about Luke and Caleb lately. I'm working on this. Doesn't apply to anybody else. Nobody will know what I'm talking about. But CC, starting this year, I'm doing Challenge B. All right, but nobody cares about that. I'm gonna look for the link.
And while you're looking for it, Thomas H says go Blackhawks. So he's in. Me, Luke, and Thomas H. Man, we're ready for this night. We're ready.
Is Thomas H. watching? Thomas H. Are you watching? Can you keep us up to date? We need to know how the Wolves are doing.
Stop. Oh my goodness. Blackhawks, man.
Blackhawks, come on. I just one of my new friends out here, a really good friend, old time friend actually, somebody who I invited back when I was in high school, made a big deal. He worked with me. I invited a bunch of my friends to this huge what is it called? Pay-per-view. All my friends came over. My dad was psyched about it. We got like food and everything. It was going to be a great big time. It was Holyfield versus Tyson. Lasted about 10 minutes. That was the one where he bit his ear off and over in the first round.
Yeah, one of my uncles used to get boxing pay-per-views, and me and a buddy of mine would go over. And I don't remember how many we went and watched, like maybe 3 or 4, not that many. But this was post Holyfield, Tyson, and all that. It was kind of during the days of like Lennox Lewis, Oscar De La Hoya, some of those guys. And every fight was so disappointing. It was just,
really?
Every single one. It was just like them. There was never a knockout. It was just mostly them like holding on to each other, and then like, maybe you got a couple of quick little, bursts of actual decent like connecting punching on each other during the fight, and then it was a weird judge's decision that was probably rigged. Not like that. That just like forever soured me on boxing. Like never mind all the like, head trauma and the fact that MMA has now just completely replaced it. I was never big on boxing just for that reason.
See, that was how I woke up when I watched WrestleMania, because you grow up and you hear all about John Cena and Rey Mysterio, and the action figures are so cool and the video games look mostly good. And then I actually watched WrestleMania with one of my brothers, and it was 20 minutes of smack talk, a 2-minute fight, and then we hit a commercial, and we were just staring at the screen like, why did we just do that?
WrestleMania, you can either get something really good or you can get absolute garbage.
I believe it.
And
man,
it's still preseason here, so we can riff a little. We can go down little rabbit trails. The last thing I'll say on WrestleMania is I've got a buddy who's a huge wrestling fan. It's a mutual friend of Judah and I, Steven Sandridge. And so normally he's always the one tuned into it, but for whatever reason, he wasn't able to watch one. And I was watching the one, maybe it was, I don't know if it was SummerSlam or WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania, but it was where Triple H was fighting John Cena, and they had the entrance where Triple H comes in as Conan the Barbarian. And I'm sitting here like I'm trying to describe this to Steven, like what am I even watching? And I don't remember what Cena's was, but Triple H's WrestleMania entrances were always funny because you could always see get like a clear picture of how he liked to view himself.
That's true. Okay, well, maybe I should play.
Do it again.
News in the NFL today.
But just one more thing about WrestleMania. No,
no, but seriously, the XFL. No, just kidding. All right, so the biggest thing I thought in the news, I'd like to talk about two things: Chubb concussion, Hockenson ankle. How much are we scared about this? Let's start with Chubb with a concussion. Are you guys buying high on Hunt?
See, I've been buying high on Hunt in my mock drafts because I haven't actually had an official draft yet, but I've been getting him a lot in mock drafts, especially late. If he doesn't jump, which I guess he probably will, he's sitting around like 8th round right now, 8th, maybe 9th if he slips that far. 7th round, he can go up. I've liked him. Looking at his just like base statistics, it isn't great. But I think about the Browns offense and Nick Chubb and Kareem. I mean, maybe he could be a yard eater again. He's kind of become just the passing back at this point. But if Chubb doesn't show up for week 1, especially, I mean, I know he's in concussion protocol right now, but we got a couple weeks to go. I've been high on Hunt for the offseason and Chubb, honestly. They're really the only parts of the Browns offense I'm really high on. but I'm definitely high on Hunt, and I think Chubb will be okay later down the line.
Yeah, kind of pretty similar with me. Like I've been pretty high on Hunt just because of what you can get him for. It's kind of like the same thing with Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, where it's not quite the same thing. It's a little bit different. Whereas Mack may actually be technically considered the starter. People are assuming that Jonathan Taylor is going to jump him in pretty short order, and that's entirely possible because Mack's injury prone and all that. So it's a little bit different. Chubb and Hunt have more clearly defined, or at least last year had more clearly defined roles. And so, I think Kareem Hunt is like he's like a James White now, to where, he was like a pretty safe, consistent 10, 11 points last year. But like, I think just where you can get him, there's a chance that maybe he gets more of a role this year, being in that offense for another year. He's kind of stayed out of trouble for another year. I think he could end up being, a huge bargain. And I think it might be a situation where, it's like a 55-45 split in terms of their workload and stuff. And I've seen writers, fantasy analysts, and then actual real NFL analysts or whatever advocating that the Browns should just try to make both of them 1,000-yard backs and really just ride that running game as opposed to the passing game. So I think Kareem Hunt could be, a big steal in drafts.
Breaking news. Look
Ooh,
in the league.
all filled up.
Also breaking news. Kareem Hunt is garbage. Forget about it, guys. He's not. Kareem Hunt is garbage. Why do you guys love him so much? I think that this is a lot of this injury stuff before this. We have 3 weeks before the season even starts. A little concussion, please. I think people are sleeping on Chubb, and he could very well be the number 1 running back in the league.
Oh yeah.
He's going to be top 5. This is my hot take, but Kareem Hunt is garbage. He has always been somebody who he's got great balance. That's it. He doesn't have elite speed. He doesn't have elite vision. He doesn't have elite wiggle. He's got nothing but really good balance. Now, I'll give him that. Like, he is really hard to take down. That's good. But he's a pass catching back at this point. So I don't know how much that helps.
That's brutal.
Well, I mean, you look at what he did, and last year in 2018 with the Chiefs in 11 games. And you can say, well, that was a Patrick Mahomes offense, but we'll address that. But so in 11 games, basically 2/3 of the season, he had 824 rushing yards, 378 passing yards, or receiving yards, I should say, and 7 touchdowns of each. So he had 14 touchdowns in 2/3 of a season, and basically about 1,200 yards in 2/3 of a season. So you would have been looking at, potentially about 1,800 total yards and maybe 20 touchdowns. So you can say, well, that was a Patrick Mahomes offense. Okay, if we go back a year earlier to an Alex Smith offense, he finished the season. He played all 16 games. And I'd have to go back and look to see if he got, let's see real quick, if he was kind of starting from the beginning there.
He was, yeah. Remember,
Spencer Ware got injured.
Spencer Ware got injured in the preseason.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. So he was the starter for the full season. But for that full season, he had over 1,300 rushing yards.
Leading the league, by the way.
and 8 touchdowns and 455 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So he had nearly 1,800 yards, which is what he would have had, that second year if he hadn't gotten in trouble, and 11 touchdowns. So, I think there's just something to be said for, guys who their numbers, like 40-time numbers and stuff like that, don't jump out, but they find ways to produce. And in limited, in a limited role with Cleveland last year, where he was, mostly passing down back and he was getting some work near the goal line, stuff like that. I mean, just game to game in that limited action, he was, giving you typically 10 points or so. So I'm a Kareem Hunt believer.
Mm-hmm. And I completely disagree on your statement of he doesn't have anything but balance. At his best, Kareem has bursts of speed when he finds space. He may not be the fastest or the strongest running back out there, but I think this could turn into something of a, like Jared, you were saying about how they could both be 1,000-yard rushers. When Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman were at their best, and they were a really great tandem, that could be Chubb and Kareem at the same time. Kareem could be a passing down back. He could be a rushing down back if they need him. Maybe a third down back to give Chubb rest, because we all know he was kind of carrying the offense for half the year last year. But
let me ask you a question.
Any skill other than balance is complete.
Let me ask you a question. 72 attempts, almost 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Does that sound pretty good in 11 games?
What now?
Say it again.
72 attempts, almost 500 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Are you going to throw a crappy player out there who had a short-term success to compare him to?
Spencer Ware.
Yeah.
His predecessor. It's the system. Like any Jamoke can do well in that system. Like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but go back and you look at the tape. He had huge holes to run through. Anybody can get top speed when they have grass in front of them. I will say he did have amazing balance. I watched him, and I will disagree with people that say he didn't have elite after tackle yards. He did, but there was nothing special about anything else he did. Nothing. That's why they dropped him so fast, because they could easily replace him with Spencer Ware. They could easily replace him with anybody.
Well, let's also keep in mind that the Chiefs just system in general has had people rotating in and out ever since Jamal Charles went down. They had Jamal Charles as a star for 3 to 5 years, and then after that, it was Spencer Ware, Charkandrick West, Kareem Hunt, Damian Williams. That's just the Chiefs. It's the circle of life in Kansas City. You have one good year.
I mean, you look at Damon Williams. He's just a Jamoke, but look at how well he does in that system. I mean, like 3 touchdowns in 2 games in the playoffs. He look. You might think that Hunt has elite skill. I do not.
I'm not saying that he has elite skill, depending on how we're defining skill, but I'm saying, sometimes there are just guys that, it's a combination of sort of intangibles, and then, maybe not really appreciating like what they bring in, like the passing down element to it. Like, why did the Patriots keep, giving James White that role? Why do you have, some backs that are just able to enhance their game so much through the passing game? So, it's more to me about just sort of Hunt's overall. I mean, if you took away, I think if you took away the passing game element to him, I mean, he offers very little, but that's such an important part of it, and you just don't find every guy. Like some guys will have tremendous skill and then not really be as effective in the passing game. So I don't really debate skill that much, or at least I don't care about it that much in terms of fantasy purposes, because I think it's just one part of the bigger overall package. And like I said,
it's the only part we can really truly evaluate, though. Everything else is just guesswork.
To a certain extent.
I mean, to a certain extent, everything, right? Yeah. But I mean, the best, the most tangible thing that we have to evaluate is skill. If we look at somebody and look, compare them to other players, look at, compare them to certain standards, even if we don't do it personally, we can look at other people who know better than us and say, like, this guy says this guy is not very good as a runner,
Well, actually, I would say like the most tangible thing that we have is what you just said, is what is your knock on Hunt is how well backs function within a system, and the current state of that system, because no matter how skilled you are, if
we don't know what system, we don't know the system though, especially in this case. We this is a new coach. We have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I mean, again, we'll see. We'll see. I think he's a good value. If Chubb went down, I mean, I think he's a good value, standalone value as it is. Whereas certain other guys that you're drafting maybe around that spot a little bit later, like Dobbins, you're really just kind of counting more on them, on an injury to Mark Ingram or somebody like that. Whereas with Hunt, you've got like solid flex value as a safe floor play with like huge upside if Chubb gets hurt. So
would you say comparable to Madison? Who would you rather have, Madison or Hunt?
I don't know that I've seen enough of a sample size from.
I'd rather have Madison, hands down, easy.
Okay.
See, here's the thing. I think with Kareem Hunt, I think the biggest drawback for him is, for me, the fact that he's playing in Cleveland, and I'm not 100% high on them. But if I'm taking a guy who, if however many games, if Chubb misses X amount of games, this guy's going to be the starting running back in an above average offensive line. They're not world beaters, but they're an above average offensive line. They just signed Jack Conklin in the offseason as well, so it's going to be even better. Above average offensive line. He's above average running back. He's not a world beater, but he's above average in a decent, at least functioning offense. Why wouldn't I take him in round 8 or round 9? Like, we're not advocating to take him in like round 5 or anything, but if I'm taking a good quality running back, round 9, round 8, know he's going to start, I'll absolutely take him there. He's not
take him over Madison?
See, but that's the other thing. Madison, we can get like round 11 or 12 at that point. Madison's biggest thing is
you can't get Madison.
11. You can get 12, maybe not, but you can get him in 11 some places.
So what is it about Madison? Because they seem like, just from at a glance, both were third round picks. Both didn't come out, like Kareem Hunt came out of Toledo. Madison came out of Boise State. Hunt ran a 4.66 40. Madison ran a 4.67 40. In terms of just like raw, physical traits and skill, as you would call it, they seem, pretty similar. I just have a hard time, with
differentiating them.
Well, not really even sort of differentiating them, but without having seen a larger sample size from Madison, I didn't see the games really, that he kind of got a double digit between 12 to 15 carries. I don't know that I saw any of that really. But
I watched a lot of Madison, and I just think he runs a lot better between the tackles. He's a power runner, and he has better vision. He has more power, and generally gets the ball more, touches the ball more than Hunt. Whereas Hunt is sort of a gadget player, or at least he was last year. But like you said, or like I said, I have no idea, what it's going to look like this year.
But I mean, again, it goes back to what you said about the system. I mean, the Viking system, we saw what Dalvin Cook did. I mean, Mike Boone had a huge game. I mean, that whole system was designed to feature the run. So, I mean, if you want to argue that Hunt isn't, that great, that it was the system, I mean, that's okay. But then, I think it's hard to then make the argument that Madison is, seeing how comparable they are in physical traits, and the fact that, Madison's production really came from an offense where it was designed to, be able to feature the run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're both just backup running backs, and you guys, I just feel like you guys treat Hunt like he's more than a backup, and
Because we know he's starting.
No, he's not starting
with Hunt. With Chubb, well, we know he's starting as a passing down back for sure. He's a starter as a passing down back. He's not the starter as he's our feature running back.
I don't even know if he's starting as a passing down back.
Madison's gonna get a couple touches here and there, but unless Cook goes down, he will not be the feature back.
Well, that's the same thing with Hunt.
Hunt has a defined role.
We don't know that for sure, one, and we don't know if Hunt has a defined role. How do we know that?
I'm just taking it off the example from last year. The scale, yes, to your point, they've got a new offensive coordinator, but at the same time, new coach. Yes, sorry, new coach, new system. We know that, but at the same time, I know a guy he's going to be he's a passing down back. Madison is just a bigger question mark for me because I know Dalvin Cook is there, and Madison really doesn't have that other even option of being a receiving down back, which he really hasn't been in the NFL.
Madison was pretty good for fantasy last year.
I mean, the thing about saying, that we don't know what Kareem Hunt's role is, I mean, that's basically true of anyone who's not a superstar in the league. I mean, you look at all the running backs this year, Miami, we don't know what Jordan Howard and Matt Breida's role. Indy, we don't know exactly what Mack and Taylor, the Rams.
I completely agree. That's why I believe more in skill than situation.
Well,
we have no idea what the coaches want to do with them.
But that's the problem, though, as we've said, is that the coaches don't actually go by rational philosophies of skill.
I agree. The fallacy of rational coaching, I totally agree. But I can't account for that. There's no way I can account for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't know. But, the fact that, I mean, again, what scares me about Chubb, I'm way more scared of Chubb than I am of Hunt, just based on draft position, because, I talked about last year in the final 8, 9, 10 games, he had 2 touchdowns, and he caught and basically every game was probably 2/3 of the games were either 0 receptions or 1 reception. He had a handful of games during that 10-game stretch where, he had 3 receptions for 21 yards or something like that. But, if they continue that, and again, we don't know whether they will or not, but if they do, then, I mean, you're taking Nick Chubb for, as around the 10th pick, as a fringe first round pick, or at least early second round pick, for a guy that, if they continue what they did last year, wasn't getting that many goal line carries and wasn't getting receptions. So there's just, so I guess I'm going more by risk reward. I guess I'm elevating risk reward above skill.
That's definitely that's the way to go. Next issue, Hockenson.
After 20 minutes.
Hockenson still says his ankle is bum, and that's a direct quote from me. So here's my question: is Hockenson this year's Kittle? Remember when Kittle came in the league his second year? He had the shoulder problem, and his draft stock went, and he was like top 3 tight ends that year. Could it be there is some good? I saw some JJ Zacharyson analysis of Hockenson that said Hockenson could be an elite top 3 tight end based on some of the metrics that he's looked at. Is this ankle thing scaring you? Or are you just saying, yeah, give him to me at a lower price?
Jared, I know he's your guy. You take this one first.
Well, I don't know if I would say he's my guy. I think there, kind of like we've talked about, there's a lot of really interesting young tight ends this year. Second year tight ends, especially like Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Hockenson. I just actually Googled him real quick to kind of see what some of the headlines were out there besides the ankle injury. And the first story that came up was from the Detroit Free Press that says Lions TJ Hockenson optimistic after training camp with college teammate, wait for it, All-Pro George Kittle. So then I read that and I'm like, okay, where's it? How many waiver wires is he available on? But the tough thing though is just I like to draft. I like to know that I've got a good elite tight end. And so most of my teams usually I've taken Mark Andrews because Kelsey and Kittle go for $10 to $15 more. Kelsey typically goes, about the cheapest I've got him for is like 33, 34. Typically he goes 37, 38, maybe occasionally on up into the low 40s. Kittle's usually between 30 to 35. So Mark Andrews, I can usually get for around 21, 22, somewhere in there. And, with what he did last year, I think he's just going to keep improving on that. So I've taken a ton of Mark Andrews. If he gets hurt, that's going to hurt me. But so I think it's tough for me to just collect some of these younger guys and hope that one of them breaks out. But I can completely see it being a situation like Kittle or like Andrews last year, where all of a sudden he breaks out because Detroit doesn't have, they've got Kenny Golladay. Marvin Jones is more of like a big play receiver who, pops up once every 4 games to blow up for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then, doesn't do all that much in the others. So, potentially he's got an opportunity to really be, a stud guy like that. But I think it really depends on what kind of league you're in. Like if you're in a deeper league, then I think it makes more sense to get your running backs early, maybe, just pass on those elite tight ends and then collect at least a couple of them and hope that one of those younger guys breaks out. And, I think it could be potentially Hockenson.
AJ, what say you?
So I've been just really quickly just looking over a bunch of stuff about just Lions tight ends in general. And the biggest thing about Hockenson isn't really so much his ankle, but the system he's in. And Jared, as much as you talk about how it takes a couple years for tight ends to develop. And Lions tight ends have never really been great in history with Matthew Stafford. I mean, Brandon Pettigrew had a couple good years. Eric Ebron had 2 700-yard years with only like 4 touchdowns. So if I'm looking at fantasy-wise, I think there's probably more tight ends I'm willing to take a chance on, like Noah Fant in Denver, which I know is going to be a for sure primary passing offense. And Hayden Hurst, I know Judah Buddha, that's your guy. He's in Atlanta. We know Matt Ryan loves to throw, especially in the red zone to his tight ends. Even though Jared Cook scares me because the Saints just got another tight end. Hockenson just worries me because he's in Detroit. And like Jared, I have taken Travis Kelce consistently for, I think, 3 years in a row. And so on like almost all of my main teams in general. And so it's pretty difficult for me to get away from doing that. I think he could be decent, but the ankle thing worries me. Stafford not throwing in the end zone to tight ends worries me. The amount of tight ends we have this year just playing and predicted to play well in fantasy this year worries me. I think he could be good. But last year he showed up for like 2 games, got hurt, didn't have a great season. I think he could be good, but there's other tight ends right now that I'd rather take ahead of him.
Yeah, the ankle injury is the big thing. I think with the system, well, the two things you mentioned, the ankle injury and just, again, the amount of other, potential breakout tight ends. The system, I have mixed feelings on the system because on one hand, I agree with you. It doesn't seem like, Stafford, really loves that position the way somebody like Matt Ryan loves his tight ends or something like that. But at the same time, like, they have not had that much there. They've tried to draft stuff there, like Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron was a high pick. And then mostly, apart from that one crazy year with Andrew Luck and the Colts, where he was a red zone option, has just been absolute garbage. And so I don't know. I think Hockenson is, he's going to be on the waiver wire in a lot of 10-team leagues. And I think he could be a guy that, like, after week 1 or week 2, kind of like he did last year, where he blew up in week 1 for 100 yards and a touchdown or 2. He could be a huge, like, popular pickup after week 1.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Andrews because our next news item is nobody can stop him.
I saw
there
that.
You go.
I saw that.
Do you buy the hype? I mean, these are his teammates, but it's kind of good news for a dude who's got, we're kind of worried about whether he's going to take it easy because of his. You said he's the only one that has diabetes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like he's taking it easy on his teammates.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of hype from him in camp last year, and then that proved to be real. Last year he dealt with a foot injury that just kind of lingered a good bit. Look, he had 98 in 15 games. In 15 games last year, he had 98 targets, 64 receptions, 852 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So if he had played all 16, he would have had even more than that. I mean, you're looking at a guy who could very realistically have 75 receptions, 1,100 yards, and a dozen touchdowns at tight end. Like, he could produce, better than Travis Kelce numbers, really, because Kelce, for some weird reason, doesn't get as many touchdowns as you would think someone like him would. I mean, I think it's probably a combination of, like, when he was running with Alex Smith and guys like that, he didn't have the best quarterback. So it was a lot of, like, 4 touchdown seasons. He had 2 big ones, in 2017 and 2018, where it was 8, and 10. But normally he doesn't produce what you would expect a matchup problem like him to create, like Gronk level touchdown numbers. So if Kelce or if Andrews can match the yards, and then, have those double-digit touchdowns, like, man, that's super attractive for a guy who's like $21 in auctions.
Yeah, you can get him probably 4th or 5th round pretty easily.
Yeah,
and the other thing is, like, in the red zone for the Ravens, of course they're going to run the ball a lot, but in terms of big targets, look at the rest of their receivers. It's Hollywood Brown, Miles Boykin, guys like that who are all just tiny little guys. And then you've got this massive target in Mark Andrews. So that's the other thing that I like about him, and kind of to go to, another guy, Michael Pittman in the Colts offense, where when someone has like a distinct role that no one else can really within the team can compete with them on, like, that's pretty attractive,
I think the thing for me that makes me kind of go a little bit crazier on Andrews, because he was really kind of a season saver for me a couple places late in the year. The biggest thing for me is that last year he had about 60 targets and 600 yards sniped by backup tight ends. And Hayden Hurst isn't going to be there anymore. And I mean, I don't really think that everyone else behind him, Nick Boyle, is going to be that much of a threat. This is a guy who got 800 yards, 10 touchdowns, didn't play an entire season, and had 60 targets taken from him by other tight ends. I like Andrews. I like him a lot.
Well, I agree with you guys. I am 2 thumbs up on Andrews. That was a great find by you last year. Jared, you were definitely on top of him. Let's see. We got a couple of comments here. Sam, thanks for tuning in, brother.
I think he was here last season. I'm pretty sure.
Thanks for coming back. Rip Antonio Brown. Yeah, I think at this point we can kind of assume he's not going to be. I don't know, but I saw somebody take him and put him on IR. He fits on IR in some leagues, so you could try that. Ben says agreed on Hunt. Agree with who?
With you.
Probably
with
you guys.
Sure.
No,
I'm pretty sure it was you. Okay, either way.
Well, let us know, Ben. Do you agree with me or these guys? All right. Luke says AJ's face. What you're talking about? Having it. He was not having a bit of it.
Mm-mm.
And then Ryan N says Evans loves Brady. He's stuck. Ryan is so stuck. All he wants to talk about.
Our resident Bucks fan, man.
Are the Bucks.
I would imagine Evans does love Tom Brady. I mean, we'll see when it gets in actual games, but I would imagine he's going to have more confidence that the ball is more likely to go to him than the opposing team with Tom Brady. So, but I'm still a little bit leery of the possibility that, the fact that Jameis just played them into such deficits and then forced them to keep throwing, might hurt them.
It's almost like motivation. It's like, guys, let's go.
Yeah.
We got to do this to win. Whereas it might be if their defense is really good, and you know how Brady is kind of dink and dunk, it might be, all right, guys, we got a 5-point lead. Let's go.
Well, I think the dink and dunk thing scares me a little bit more than him wanting to just protect a lead, because I think what I was going to say was I think what offsets some of my concern about the game situation, how they won't be, playing from behind and forced to throw as much. What offsets some of that for me is the fact that how competitive Tom Brady is going to be. And he is going to be on a mission to prove that he is not washed up. He is going to want to put up. He would want to lead the league in yards and touchdowns if he can.
Yeah. I don't know if he can, but he's definitely going to try. And everything I've seen leads me to believe that he will. He is working his hiney off out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of respect for him. I was about to put that up. Touchdown, Tommy. Toews got
Uh-oh. We just lost Judah, and then AJ's audio is down.
Oh, no.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, that hurt. That hurt me. It's Taze. It is Jonathan Taze. Thank you, Thomas H.
Yeah, I would have been lost on. I would have been lost on that one.
What? His name's not Toe.
No, it's Taze. He's Canadian.
I think his name's Toyo.
It is Taze.
At least he got a touchdown. That's good. Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Stop.
Two guys from the South, Georgia and North Carolina. This is not the mecca of hockey.
All right, next on the docket, we got a lot of little news.
Yeah.
Alex Smith is back.
Yeah,
matter, and especially for scoring McLaurin.
It's
I don't know
1C.
if I spelled that right.
1C.
Huh?
1C.
Oh, all right.
I got it.
You can change it. So Smith being back is kind of an exciting story.
Mm-hmm.
It's also exciting because I saw the coach saying, whatever his name is, Riverboat Ron, there saying, we don't know nobody is for sure the starter.
Mm-hmm.
And if it had been, if we had preseason, it wouldn't have been Haskins. What? Okay.
Wow. Yep.
The Alex Smith is a great story. But I like in terms of him getting on the field, like one, I'm sure they wouldn't let him if doctors hadn't told him that he was, either no more at risk than anybody else or at very minimal added risk. That just like if he plays though, I'm gonna be tense as I watch him play because that is just so scary knowing like what happened to him and what almost happened to him. And thinking about something like that happening again, I would rather him just not play.
Is it more likely that it happens to him than anybody else?
Well, that's what I just said is, I assume, I would certainly hope that he wouldn't be out there if they had told him that he was at, increased risk to have it happen again. I would assume that he's no more at risk to have a freak thing like that happen again than anybody else. Mm-hmm. But still, I mean, his age, he's 36 and just all these different things. Like I kind of hope that he comes back, but then just like maybe gets some kneel downs or something and doesn't really play. Anyway, that aside, even if he plays, like Alex Smith was never like a great fantasy friend to receivers.
That's true.
And so then on top of, I forget like who all's there in Washington as quarterbacks, because on top of those two, then you've got Kyle Allen, who came over from Carolina. And so
that's who Riverboat Ron said would have started in the preseason.
Right. And that's what I would kind of probably lean towards is maybe he gets the first shot unless Dwayne Haskins impresses. And I don't know that those two terms are going to go together that often. Dwayne Haskins impressing people. So I would think there's a pretty good chance. I think that would be great for Terry McLaurin's value if that happens, because Kyle Allen isn't great, but look what he did with DJ Moore last year, So sure. I would at least feel better about him than Haskins and better about him than Alex Smith. But Terry McLaurin, I think, is one of the most volatile players. Like he's got huge potential for upside if, under the right circumstances, but he could also turn out to, produce like way under like where he's going, because I mean, he's around 40 in terms of the overall rankings now.
Oh man, Alex Smith, I like him as like a player because he's kind of that journeyman veteran at this point who's like Jared, to your point, he's been good, not great, with the exception of his 2017 campaign where he threw for 4,000 yards. His best year last year in Kansas City was his best one. And he was having, for an on par Alex Smith year, heading straight for 20 touchdowns and 3,500 yards in Washington before he got injured. I think the crazy thing is the fact that he came back at all, because this was a Joe Theismann type injury where you don't really come back. I can't believe they even saved his leg in the first place. And then right now, at their best, Kyle Allen, he threw 1,000 yards to DJ Moore, but Carolina's offensive line is better than Washington's. Washington's offensive line was rife with injuries last year, and I don't know how he's going to be in an offense where now Darius Geis is gone. We don't know what their running back situation is going to look like. I don't trust their offensive line. Scary Terry is kind of like the only solid moving piece that I trust at all. So Kyle Allen worries me. And then on the other side, you've got Dwayne Haskins, who didn't do great last year. But then again, the Redskins were terrible last year. So I don't know what you want to say about that. The safest option right now, if he returns to peak form, is Alex Smith. I just don't know if he's ready to take another season of punishment as an NFL quarterback behind Washington's offensive line. If he's back to the Alex Smith of I throw 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns a year and he's going to be fine, great. I don't know how you did it, but great. Congratulations. You get to stay in Washington for another 2 years. But, oh, man, Washington is just a mess. I don't want to touch, period, fantasy or otherwise, except Terry. I mean, I'll take him, but that's about it. I didn't like Darius Geis to take originally, and now I don't even really want to take anyone at all. If Alex Smith's back, great, but if he starts, he's the only one I would trust out of the three for fantasy. That's it.
It would be the opposite for me. I just I know what you're saying about his career year in Kansas City, but like even that now, like 4,000 yards and 26 touchdowns is kind of an average year by most standards. And the scary part is like him being 36 now. With you look at the rest of his years, and basically he averages about 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. And that doesn't really matter for him because, nobody's really going to be drafting him except if it was a like 16 team, 2 quarterback league or something. But I don't know what that would do to Terry McLaurin's value,
True. Depends on where they play him. It'd be nice to see. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, McLaurin could play anywhere on the field. So it'd be nice. I mean, if he does play slot, he would get peppered by Smith.
Is he a slot? Would he really be a slot guy though? Like he never.
I don't know.
I don't think he really played that at Ohio State. Like it was Paris Campbell.
Last year he played. I think he played like 20% of his snaps in the slot, but I don't know. I can't remember very well. Maybe effort that, AJ. In the meantime, our last, unless you guys have anything else, there's a couple little tidbits out there, but just for the matter of time, I'd like to talk about Taylor Swift bulldozing people and catching passes.
Okay.
Taylor is bulldozing people and Swift is catching passes. Oh, did you guys think I was talking about the singer? No.
I didn't know
what
I'm talking about.
The rookies, Taylor and Swift. There is an ongoing, even here within the podcast, an ongoing question of whether or not Taylor with the Colts or Swift with the Lions will have more impact. And today we got both of them. We got big news. Of course, like the coaches are going to say, teammates are going to say, we actually got video of Taylor bulldozing over some, his own defensemen. But Swift catching passes and Taylor is a beast when it comes to running people over. What do you guys think? Are we looking at the next 2 running backs of 2020 or 2021?
They both very much could be 2020 for sure. I know more about Swift being that I watched him every week, being a Georgia fan, and I like him in Detroit a lot. We really haven't had, Jared's pointed out, we really haven't had a great Detroit running back since Barry Sanders. And DeAndre was, it's funny because he doesn't seem as good coming out of Georgia because we've been spoiled with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel at Georgia over the last 4 or 5 years. And before that, Todd Gurley. So when someone doesn't rush for, 1,700 yards or whatever, it seems a little underwhelming, but he was a good running back and he wasn't really the biggest pass catcher out there. But I mean, Jonathan Taylor is no pushover either. I mean, he rushed for almost 2,000 yards in 3 straight years. Granted, at Wisconsin. No offense, Wisconsin, but it's completely different than the SEC. But they're both very good running backs. I probably like DeAndre this year more because all he has to beat is an injury-ridden Kerryon Johnson, which Kerryon's good when he's healthy. When he's healthy being the main question, compared to Jonathan Taylor, who's going to have to face Mac, who's good when he's healthy, and Nyheim Hines, which I don't know how that's going to work out with the 3 of them. But right now, Swift is probably looking a little bit better in position, but in the long run, next year there will probably be their even bigger breakout campaigns depending on how things go this year.
Yeah, it's tough because they're, even though it's like apples to apples in terms of, two talented rookies, their situations sort of make it an apples to oranges comparison where, Jonathan Taylor is he's behind maybe the best offensive line in football. I mean, if he had that job all to himself,
yeah, he would be getting the hype CEH is getting.
Absolutely more. I think more. Yeah, I think he would be if he had that job all to himself. I still don't know. I wouldn't take him over McCaffrey or something, but I might pick him second because that offensive line is just crazy. So,
but you're not. Have you even picked up any Mac?
Me?
Yeah,
because I could get him for usually $2 or $3. He's starting to go for more because they're talking more about him being still technically the starter. So people are starting to wake up. Like a lot of people who were drafting were just assuming like, it's going to be Taylor, even though there was general talk about how it would be a split. But it took until I think a week or so ago, one of the Colts coaches said like, yeah, no, Mac's still our starter. And then people are like, oh crap. And so now Mac's starting to go for like $5, $6, $7 in some auctions that I've seen. But so you've got just this tremendous situation there for him that offers huge upside if he gets the bulk of the carries and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, maybe this is the year Mac stays healthy and, and they still utilize Naheem Hines and in that case, but then again, with Detroit, you would think that DeAndre Swift is, the more talented guy, would probably get the bulk of it there, but we have no idea how he's going to be used. I mean, there was a little report the other day, where let's see if this one's from the other day. Okay. So from Sunday, Lions offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell said it, quote, remains to be seen, end quote, how DeAndre Swift fits in the offense. What? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like just kind of coach speak and, them making a point that he hasn't been guaranteed anything, but you do still have Kerryon Johnson there. They turned to like Bo Scarborough as a power back last year. So you would think that Swift's talent would, make him, give him the most opportunities. But the way the Lions have been with running backs and the running game and everything else, it's tough to know, exactly what it'll be. The one thing that I do quibble with is the fact that Taylor goes typically 4th round, or for $20, maybe $21 in auction drafts, whereas Swift is more of a 5th round type guy, and then goes for more like maybe 12, 13, 14, 15, something like that. So, I mean, to me, if I had to, I would put them at least on about the same level, if not maybe, giving a slight edge to Swift in terms of just thinking that he's going to have the better role. So that's the one thing that kind of gets me about that, is that seems kind of backwards to me.
The interesting thing about both of them is that I think Jared and you too, Judah, brought this up. They had to learn the offense half the year on Zoom, which is not going to help them any, which maybe that points to you guys saying maybe Mac and Kerryon are going to start the year. And the difference between the two of them, I think, is that Kerryon has had back-to-back years with knee injuries to the same knee, both his right knee. Mac's last 2 injuries were a head concussion, which happens, and then a hand fracture. So despite the fact that he's had hamstring problems a couple years back, the more prevalent problem between the two of them is Kerryon has knee issues. And that's the thing that really makes me put Swift over Taylor in this situation, is the fact that it's just repetitive injury, though both of them are going to have a harder road, being that they haven't had the most ideal conditions to learn their offenses in.
And hasn't, for Carry On, I don't know what his college injury was, but I remember when his last year in college where they were, going to play, where they played Georgia and he got hurt in that game. So I don't know. I think it was a knee injury in that game. Maybe it was something else, but yeah, the last 2 years he played 8 games last year and 10 games the year before. I mean, he just can't stay healthy, and he got hurt in that in his last year at Auburn.
Mm-hmm. I think it was a hamstring injury that year.
Okay, that actually sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that was
well,
it.
I'm basically with you guys. I'd rather take the cheaper guy. I don't think either of them are going to do fantastic to start the year. It's going to take them a couple of weeks to get integrated, and I would much rather have Mac. I love his skill level, and I love his price, and I love his offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Give me Mac. Give me all the Mac, and maybe Swift. But I've always been higher on Swift. I have to say, though, that I'm coming around a little bit on Taylor. Just call me impressionable. I'm seeing so much about him. I'm seeing so much hype about him. I think it's starting to wear on me. Help me, guys. Help me not draft him. I don't want any Mac. I don't want any CEH, but it's just hard not to see the new toys and think, I want,
I've warmed up more to CEH. With Damian Williams out. Like my CEH doubt was, mostly about Damian Williams. And then once
similar
he was
argument that we've been saying about the other guys. And initially I was like, ooh, now his price is going to go up even more, but it's just too tempting in that Kansas City offense. It's just too tempting to not take some shares of him because he has, in terms of talent, he has nobody else really, I think, that competes with him. And Kareem Hunt, they turned that backfield over to him his rookie year. So I'm more in on CEH now. Now I will say I was a Kareem Hunt owner that year, and I do remember some very big ups, but some very big downs. He did not help me towards the end of the year. So buyer beware. You will have some big games because of that system. But as we've talked about on this show, you guys brought me around on this. The Chiefs, Andy Reid, he will go away from the running back, more often than not. What you looking at? You looking at the stats?
I'm not looking at anything right now. I was just gonna let that sit. I've kind of like settled to the point where I feel like we might be heading towards Kareem Hunt being your 2020 Derrick Henry.
Okay.
I just decided that I wasn't going to argue it anymore, and we'll just wait and see. No, I said maybe, like it would probably take. I think it would take a Nick Chubb injury, because if he's healthy, he's going to get bare minimum 50 to 55% of the snaps. So I don't think Kareem Hunt can do it unless he gets hurt. But it just feels like maybe the universe is gonna like propel us towards that.
I feel the same way. Actually, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I'm basically dooming Chubb's career. I feel bad for the man. I'm putting bad juju on him right now.
If you want to, like, the guy you should be down on this year because we debated this guy too, and I was in on him for the end of the year last year, but now I don't feel good about him. Is Aaron Jones? That's really the guy that you should be attacking because there's interesting stuff with that backfield too. Because I mean, not only do you have Jamal Williams, not only is Aaron Jones destined absolutely for touchdown regression, but they are really talking up, not necessarily even in terms of what he's doing in practice, but just
how big he is,
how big his legs, like his tree trunk legs are, is AJ Dillon, and so you add in, that element, and that's a guy that we haven't said hardly anything about, that not that many people are really talking about, period. But say Aaron Jones gets hurt, or they start working Dillon in a little bit, and he shows a lot. Like that is a guy who's not really getting talked about a lot, who could potentially end up being a league winner this year.
Yeah, AJ Dillon. Sorry, we want to say something?
Go ahead. AJ
Dillon to me was like my Keyshawn Vaughn number 2, because Keyshawn Vaughn is also known as a big goal line threat in college, but then they brought in Shady McCoy and everything went out the window. And Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are so different, because Aaron Jones is the type of guy who, look, I'm going to score from 15 yards out and you got to catch me, which nobody's able to do. And then AJ Dillon is a guy who basically stares at you and gives you this dead stare and says, I will run you over. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they do inside the 20, especially midway through the year. Which one do they defer to? If you're farther out, do you go Aaron Jones because he's got bursts of speed? When you're 5 yards out, do you go Dillon because he can run between the tackles? That's going to be very curious to me to see what happens.
Well, I think the reason we haven't talked too much about him is because I think we all are sort of out on what's his name? The guy who's going in the second round,
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, yeah. So I think we're all sort of out on Aaron Jones. I don't think any of us are too high on Aaron Jones. And then if Aaron Jones does get injured, we're looking at probably a 2-man committee between Jamal Williams and what's his name?
AJ Dillon.
Dylan.
Maybe, but I haven't watched a ton of AJ Dillon, but just from like what have seen of him and his metrics and stuff like that, he actually seems to kind of remind me of your guy. Well, actually AJ's guy too, Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
He's got about the same kind of 40 time. He's this power back. He's 6 foot, 247. Whereas let's see what, I don't remember Chubb off the top of my head. Chubb is 5'11", 227. So he's actually, bigger and more physical than Chubb. I haven't watched him enough to really know what his vision's like. I would assume at that size, he's not the most elusive back out there on the field. But, I don't.
Power back, dude. But he's a goal line. He might not be more than like, who is that guy? The round guy they had on.
He's got the same 40 time as Nick Chubb. So
yeah, but Nick Chubb is amazing as far as being able to see the hole and his elusiveness, as you mentioned, elusiveness. Nick Chubb's amazing when it comes to elusiveness and just his stop-go leg, juking people out of their minds.
I gotta say, as a Georgia fan, just hearing you praise Nick Chubb so highly is just music to my ears,
dude. Who is it? Matt Waldman called Nick Chubb back when he was a rookie, called him a Lamborghini. And I agree.
Description might be a Ram truck.
That's a random description to me. I mean, he
was talking about who was ahead of him. I can't remember.
Duke Johnson?
No. It was the guy he's with the Seahawks right now. He's
Carlos Hyde?
Yeah. So Carlos Hyde was starting, and
Forgot about that.
everybody was big on Carlos Hyde.
Really?
And Matt Waldman said, he looked in the camera and said, Carlos Hyde is a truck. Chubb is a Lamborghini.
Comparatively.
Mark my words.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And like 2 days later, 2 days later, they dropped Hyde like a bad towel, and then went exclusively with Chubb.
But you look at you look at players around the league, and you have a guy like that. Like, who would have ever thought that, like a year and a half ago, who would have thought that Derrick Henry would be able to produce what he has now? Yeah, AJ. Yeah,
I was high on him coming out of Alabama. That was just me.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, like, if you saw the way the Titans had used him, for those first few years, it didn't look like they had any real intention of putting him in, a featured role. I mean, through nearly 3 full seasons, he just, was getting 100 and something carries, and then all of a sudden, those last few games of that 2018 season is where they really kind of let him take off. But so I think it's easy to dismiss like someone as like, oh, he's just a power guy or something like that. But depending on what a team wants to do, I mean, that can still produce tremendously. And we've talked about the Packers now, how they're transitioning to being a running team. Mm-hmm. And last year, maybe their approach fit more of what Aaron Jones could give to them. But again, maybe he gets hurt. Maybe there's an opportunity to see more of Dillon, and maybe they say, hey, the Titans had a pretty good little model here. Maybe we'll see if AJ Dillon can be our Derrick Henry here.
I think that's one thing I wanted to talk about was depth chart, and I think Dillon would be the number one guy that we should look at that nobody else is talking about. Yeah. He's third on the depth chart now, but he could easily be the number one running back for the Packers, the high octane offense of the Packers by week 6. You're absolutely right. And it's not somebody, I guess the difference is it's not somebody I really want on my bench or my roster at all right now, but he's definitely somebody that he's one of those guys that I want to talk. We don't have time today, but at some point I want to talk about depth chart and really being familiar with the Dillons, with the just all these guys who are lower on the depth chart so that we don't really know their names.
Maybe the Tuesday after the draft, maybe we do a depth chart episode then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be good because we don't have to draft these guys, but we need to know about them. I think particularly this year, because I just believe there's going to be so much turnover, whether it's COVID, the flu. We haven't even talked about how the flu might be worse than anything this year, because everybody's staying at home and nobody's expecting it. Who knows? Injury because of lack of practice. There's so much potential for turnover this year that I think that it's going to be particularly important for us to be aware who is third, because you're going to see some running backs, in particular running backs, get injured. And last year we saw fifth string guys come on and do well. I don't know if Boone was fifth string, but he was fourth string. And we saw some other guys. Boston Scott was like fourth, fifth string, So just I think it's important to be aware of at the beginning of the year this year, because it could happen faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, there's so many guys that are like quote unquote sleepers for, I mean, not even just sort of your average fantasy player, but even for a lot of analysts, because they are the ones that are most likely to be, not necessarily most ready, but just all the factors kind of come together that if they got thrust into a bigger role, that, they could really be a league winner or whatever. But you've got some of these guys like AJ Dillon, or with the Chargers, say something happens to Austin Eckler, maybe that fourth round guy that they drafted out of UCLA, Josh Kelly, some of these other guys that, no one's going to be talking about right now. We're like every other season, we're going to have some of those guys that you're just going to go back and imagine like, oh, what if I'd have only known like what, role and production I was going to get out of Josh Kelly. Yeah. I mean, he would have been a third round pick or whatever. So I think that would be fun to kind of go through some of the ones that hardly anybody's talking about that might end up, having a huge role.
Yeah. Because I'm just going through the names now and I'm like, who? Jalen, Balaj is still on the team. What? Just some of these depth charts are pretty huge, and I think it'd be important to look and see who do we think would be any value.
Also, the last 6 minutes while you guys have been talking, I've been slowly compiling my AJ Dillon scouting report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, just for everybody to know, they have 2 touchdowns. And
they got a safety. They got a safety.
Oh,
Clearly, they got a safety. Yeah.
No, looks like they kicked the field goal.
That's
2-1, end of the first period.
Thank you, Thomas.
Looks like the Wolves are winning. So let's
make it stop.
I think Tua Avos.
Well, it's like the similar colors to the Falcons, and so it's like we can call them like ice rink Falcons or something,
Ice rink Falcons.
But they would have to get up like 8-1 and then blow that. So
oh no.
MathQuest says,
"Hey man,
is it just me or does MathQuest always say something about Clyde Edwards-Helaire every week?"
That's okay. That's okay. He's a popular trending name.
Yeah. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire the no doubt rookie? No, I don't think he's the no doubt rookie number 1.
Jared's face for like half a second. The surprise. Oh man.
Going in, are you saying that he may not finish as the no doubt rookie number 1, or that there's someone? Yeah. Okay, but going into it,
I think you got to say he's going into it. He's got the best opportunity. Yeah,
best opportunity on the best offense in the league. I mean, it's hard to get better than that,
Yeah. Especially when you look at like all the other running backs, and our biggest drawback for him was, he's got competition in Damian Williams, and now he doesn't. And we just went over our rookie rankings a little bit ago, and it's like, who else is there? Swift's going to have to beat out Carryon, which he could do. Taylor's going to have to beat out Mack, which he could do. Dobbins is going to have to beat out Ingram. That's going to be tougher. Akers, Moss, they're all going to have people to beat out. Clyde's got the easiest, shortest path to running back number 1 because he's the running back number 1.
He has the easiest, shortest path, but there is a non-zero chance and probably a high percentage chance, like I'll say 30% chance, that he just messes up and loses the job to, let's see. We got so many other running backs.
Darrell Williams, DeAndre Washington, Darwin Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, these are all guys that know the system better and are better pass blockers. Better. I just think better athlete, or at least as good of athletes. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's the shiny toy, but. I mean, coming into the league, everybody said that what was his name? Let me go back to the depth chart here. Who was the rookie last year? Everybody was raving about.
What team? Do you know what team? Maybe that came
Kansas City. So everybody was talking about Darwin.
Darwin.
Yeah, like Darwin Thompson. Like
he was a
sixth.
No. He was a 6th round pick who was getting that 6th round pick hype that lots of picks get, where it's like, oh, he was he was a no, he was a 6th round pick for a reason, and then just inevitably, especially like the team fan base, like gets on board with like, oh, this guy's going to be like,
That's true.
Probably not. So 6th round pick versus a 1st round pick. Boom.
If they had picked Swift, like I still don't understand, why didn't they grab Swift? Did Swift already gone before them?
No, he was the CEH was the first running back off the board.
First running back, right?
Yeah.
That's so strange to me.
That was a shocker. I think it's system. I think, because Taylor, you look at how much they like to dump off to Kareem Hunt, how much they like to dump off to Damian Williams. Taylor's not that good of a receiving back. Now Swift is. That is sort of interesting that they valued CEH over Swift. Dobbins is a little bit more, I think, of a runner. I think he can.
He's between the tackles,
but he's more of a runner. So I guess basically it just came down to they valued him over Swift more but the others wouldn't have fit that system as well.
It did help that CEH did line up in the slot every now and then at LSU, though. So if City Andy Reid's going to trick up some gadget plays, that can help. And he's got a great jump cut, and he hits the hole well.
Where did he go to school?
LSU.
I.e. the team that has literally the greatest season in college football history next to Georgia.
Yeah, I heard something about. I think I heard something about Mahomes like really lobbied for him too. I don't know why he would have. I was thinking they might have been on. They weren't even in the same conference, were they? Ever?
No. Patrick Mahomes was Big 12, right? Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Maybe he just saw something in CEH that he liked, but I heard he really lobbied for him. So I don't know.
I'm probably going to give Patrick Mahomes whatever he like. Patrick Mahomes is just going to own the city of Kansas City. Like now he owns part of the Royals.
Yeah.
They are going to give Patrick Mahomes whatever he wants. But I mean, but if you think about it, like what they were able to do with Damian Williams, who's more comparable to, if they like that model, then who's more comparable to Damian Williams, CEH or Swift? And I would say CEH. And so I think they're just establishing that they want a shifty little good receiving back more than they want like a true running back. And when you've got Patrick Mahomes, and you're going to want to keep the ball in his hands as much as possible so that he can decide if he wants to go to the running back, if he wants to go to Travis Kelce, if he wants to go to Tyreek Hill or Hardman or somebody like that. So I think it makes sense for them. It's not necessarily that CEH is the better player, but they're looking at it as a compliment to. It's almost kind of it almost kind of reminds me of like an NBA team. That like in the NBA draft where they will already have two like cornerstone players, and they will draft like a good 3-point shooting wing over the more talented overall player because that's what complements the foundation more.
Well, it's going to be interesting. That's probably it's probably something that's most interesting to me coming into the season. Like what I really want to watch is see how CEH does, how all these rookies do. I'm really curious to see how much playing time they get, how many touches they get, who comes in and spells them, how Mac does, how Kerryon Johnson. How Aaron Jones? I think that I'm glad you brought that up, Jared, because it is going to be curious. So many people have taken Aaron Jones and on the turn, with their 11th, 10th, 11th pick, maybe at the beginning of the second. That could be a huge blunder.
Yeah,
but in general, yeah. What?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, he's more of a third round guy for me. Like I wouldn't be comfortable taking him in the second. I think I have one share of Aaron Jones.
I'd rather have Todd Gurley.
50 leagues.
What's that? Oh yeah, right. In my 50 leagues. Yeah.
I'd rather have Todd Gurley. I'd rather have Mixon. I'd rather have. I mean, all these guys. Josh Jacobs. I'd rather have. There's just like a ton of running backs I'd rather have than him, and actually, there's a ton of wide receivers I'd rather have than him.
Right. Speaking of Todd Gurley, I saw where you saw the story of where he was in, just wasn't in pads today. The Falcons are kind of continuing the Rams load management thing, which, I mean, they were sort of making a big deal of it in the story today. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it makes sense. He's a veteran player at this point. He plays a position where you don't need to be out there, every day in pads. I think it just makes perfect sense.
Keep saying that, please, because I agree with you completely. And
you have a lot of stock in him.
I do have a lot of stock.
I have a lot of stock in it too, because I looked at mine once I saw that story, and I'm like, oh, I have a good amount of stock in him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have he is pretty high percentage. Oh yeah, we gotta look at our percentages after the draft. Let's look at our percentages and see who we have, or maybe right before the draft, and see. Wait, the draft is next Saturday, so yeah, maybe Saturday morning we can look at.
Is it this Saturday coming up? This Saturday, yeah.
This Saturday coming up at 8:30 at night. It'll be interesting. What is that? What did I see there?
I wasn't sure if we're talking about it yet. If we're in the middle of something, I'll pull it up later. Okay.
2-2, guys. That's 2-2.
How did we blow 1 minute into this? Yes, Thomas H. Thank you for telling me that. I needed that. Thank you, Thomas H. Let's go. And I want you to read this. I want you to read. We did 3-2 Hawks in the second. Blackhawks.
I know, but who scored? Was it
carefully?
Towewe
Tays. What game is this, Judabu? What is Luco Hayes saying right here? What is Luco Hayes saying right here? What game is this?
We wish the Ice Rink Falcons all the best of luck.
Oh my God.
Ice Rink Falcons.
They're both, all right, the Falcons and Hogs, basically the same thing. They have almost the same color scheme. I think they can beat our Ice Rink Falcons. And that's just, it makes too much sense.
You know what? That's it. I was the comeback kids in our fantasy league. I'm changing it to Ice Rink Falcons. That is it.
Oh, it looks like it was Candy Cane.
Let's go, Patrick Kane. That's what I'm talking about.
Patrick Kane and Taves are the two, right? They're the main guys, right?
Yeah. Yep. They're the stars.
Who does Wayne Gretzky play for now?
Wow.
He plays on the same team as Patrick Roy.
Oh, that's got to be a good duo for them there.
All right, we're gonna wrap things up. Did you have something that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I just had this absolutely gigantic box right there.
Battle Royale.
That's our league.
That's our league. Judah Boot in order of who joined.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know what the draft order is yet. That's going to be random, right?
I think it's just great that Judah gets to finish first in something on this.
Shots fired. Oh man.
I'm gonna call my team Relish. Sweet Relish. What was I? Oh, so here is a question. I want to put a serious question. I want to put you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I add an extra bench spot.
Oh,
what if we add another? Huh?
So 16 players on the roster.
Added one bench spot and 2 IR spots. I think we have 3 IR spots now, just because of COVID. What do you guys think of getting rid of the kicker and adding a flex? I'll even add it I don't know if you can, but like you can put a kicker in that flex if you want.
Wow. I feel like this is directed at me.
It's directed to everybody. People in the chat. Do you guys? I'm going to put it in the chat in the league. This is my thinking with COVID and everything. Do we want an extra position that if they get COVID right before the game, we have a 0 for that? Because there's nobody you're going to be able to switch out for him, and I guess you could get somebody off the waiver wire, but it just seems like an added headache that we just don't need. Why don't we just add another flex? That way we could switch in and out tight end, a running back. I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
So I have a couple of thoughts here. No, I don't want it full screen for him.
All right.
Go back. So I'm fine with that. Like, it's a free league. And so I think we could go crazy. The only thing I would say about that, though, is I would say we maybe don't want to get too crazy, because I don't know, or too outside the box, unless everybody's on board with it, because we're already doing an auction draft, which maybe not as many people are familiar with. And if we start like really changing it up, I think it's going to maybe give, some people an unfair, the veterans an unfair advantage. So I like it personally, but I think that's maybe risky to get a little too far outside the box. The other thing I was going to say, what you made me think of, was a point that I wanted to bring up. Like, with them testing players, the thing is going to be that they're going to test players right before the game, right? I wonder how much you're going to have people, or if this would make sense as a strategy, if you've got a bench spot that you don't really care about having, like there's not a great option out on the waiver wire to add in that spot. Mm-hmm. Is it going to make sense before each set of games, like early games, late games, Sunday night, Monday night, to pick up, like, say one of your running backs is going in that spot, to pick up their backup just in case? You know what I mean? Like,
I'm sorry, I missed that. To pick up a what? To
pick up, like, say your running back's backup in right before that happens, in case, because if it does, what's going to happen is, it's then going to be a rush between you and everybody else in the league to go get the guy if he's already out there. So, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I guarantee you, if it happens to people once, after that, they're going to maybe want to start, doing that. And obviously you can't, like, if if three of your guys, all three of your running backs are going at the, the early games or something, then you would have to pick one. You can't, it's hard to do that, but I'm just wondering, if that's going to be a thing. Or
here's the other thing, though. They're not just testing people. They're also putting people on the COVID list that have been in contact with people that have had COVID. And guess who's most in contact with that running back? His backup. They're both in the same drills together. They're both in the same locker room. They're both, probably the backup running back has more contact with that running back than anybody else. They might both be put on the COVID list.
That's something to consider.
Because actually, it was not. I won't credit myself. It was the CBS guys that were talking about on their podcast. Like, they were saying that it could be that we want to go out and get multiple handcuffs. Handcuffs, backups for other teams, or I don't know.
Well, I wonder then, especially for quarterbacks, if that changes the way they're running quarterback rooms and stuff like that, because it's one thing. It's one thing to lose both of your running backs and have to go to the third one or something, but it's a whole other story if you lost your first two quarterbacks, and a lot of teams don't even keep a third quarterback on the roster. I wonder if they've changed protocols in terms of, like, encouraging the backup and quarterback to, distance from each other.
That'd be smart. I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that. In the meantime, we have a vote for yes, no kickers.
Okay, Thomas H is your no kickers acolyte.
Okay, well, I don't think he's my acolyte. I never told him to think the way he does, but Math Quest also likes my acolyte ideas.
See,
And,
as a guy who loves having kickers in fantasy football, I feel like this is the one year where I would be okay with having no kickers. Because if this was just a normal year or something, then I'm like, why wouldn't we have kickers? It's just football still. But since we're in a year, I get it where it's like, oh yes, let's just have a kicking spot that just gets nullified because he got COVID for 3 weeks or whatever. I would get it this year. This year only, I would understand it. If this was just a normal fantasy football year, this would be a hard no for me. We're keeping kickers, but I would understand it.
I think I'm actually going to make this a T-shirt. So,
okay.
Math says.
Well, when you're doing that, also make this one a T-shirt. Had that a couple episodes.
I'll get one of those. No. You know what I'm gonna get is I'm gonna get it as a headband, and I'm just gonna wear it as a headband in every podcast.
I don't even think that's the right quote.
Yes.
By the way, tied up game.
Like Jim McMahon would wear like the commissioner's name up there. You just wear that instead.
Nice. Yeah.
I think we should let Mr. AJ Herschel free here so he can go finish the last of the game, watch this tight game.
Come on, Chicago.
And the rest of our viewers, that's probably where Luke Ojeda is after he joined our league.
Yeah, we're like a minute away from midnight on the East Coast, and we've got nearly we churned in nearly an hour and 45 minutes that I
didn't even notice that
flowed pretty well. Yeah, I think we had some, for us going in, like being like, is there that much to talk about? Like we rolled out some stuff.
Mm-hmm. This has been like 5 episodes in a row for us. It has just been like we're hitting our stride now as the season.
We're getting closer. Yeah.
It's getting better and better. Can you imagine when we actually have football, how awesome it's going to be?
I don't think I've let myself just, I don't want to say hope, but I don't think I've I don't really start anticipating something until we get about 10 days, 2 weeks out, maybe. From the actual games before I'm really like, oh, okay, because then it's just like a waiting game of like, when is this, you're looking at your watch the whole time, like, when is this going to show up? So once we get to that point, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, we are about to get NFL games again.
Stop it. Say that.
In weird empty stadiums. That's another thing we're going to have to get back to get back to talking about a little bit is like how much it could vary from, we've seen where the Cowboys plan to have like 50% capacity, looks like, because that's the rule that Texas allows, versus no fans starting out in like Green Bay, Chicago, New York, numerous places. Is that going to give, teams an unfair advantage there? So it's going to be really interesting.
That is going to be interesting. I didn't even think of that, like the unfair advantage part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw the Chiefs they're going to have some people in the audience, right?
Yeah, I think we probably. It would be nice if someone has compiled. I'm sure someone out there has compiled a list of what if teams have said what their policy is going to be and what it's going to be, because some of them, they're still every day I start seeing another team that is announcing what it's going to do. So there's probably still some that haven't, but I would like to know where we stand on and how big the gaps could be. I don't think it's going to be more than 50% capacity, which, is that going to create that much noise? And for a team like the Cowboys, who have tended to, at times of the year, their seats get bought out by opposing fans, like, but if you get a team that that really has a dedicated fan base,
Like
and
Seattle,
or somewhere
We
like
haven't heard what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
with it being Washington, I would say they're going to have, more of a blue state. They're going to have more of stricter policies, but I'm curious
I
to see
heard
it.
they're not. They don't have any rules there anymore. It's whatever the crowd wants. So we'll see. Might be mob rule.
It looks like so far the teams that have announced they are going to have fans.
No, I got it.
Oh, you got it too. All right, there you go.
No. I was talking.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. What was it you said?
I think the teams we're guaranteed the teams that are going to have fans so far. I'm pretty sure Atlanta, Baltimore, Dallas, Kansas City. Raiders aren't going to have any all season at all. It looks like Washington and the Patriots are going to not let them for the first month, but then after that they'll be able to start coming in. They'll reevaluate after that. So there are only a couple teams.
I would think that would be the smart thing to do. Is just kind of say, look, we're going to start with nobody, and we're just going to go from there.
I think so too. I think that's a good policy. I think it's probably, as we're starting out in the middle of September, and then flu season kind of starts in October, really. So I would guess that it's probably not going to really improve, but there might be a little window where they can have fans in for a couple of games or something. So I think that is, a smart way to go.
Yeah.
Although it might be financially difficult. Do they have to say in advance? Do they pay for these in advance? I guess I don't know.
They're letting their season ticket holders get first dibs on tickets most of the time, and then they release it to the public after that.
Yeah. All right. Well, people are voting for me. Whatever.
What office is this for?
Right.
The office of hot takes. So there's that.
Who's your running mate?
My running mate for office of hot takes. Grudem. So whatever.
I'll consider. I'll have to see who else is on the ballot, but I'll keep you in mind.
I endorse Jared to run against him.
I don't know. My hot takes are pretty spicy. But do we have anything else that we want to cover before we jet? Our time. I gotta go.
Yeah, I think that's all I got for tonight. Yep.
Do we meet back here on Saturday morning? Since we have a big, we're going to stream Saturday night, I assume.
Oh yeah.
I think if we're going to stream, I think we just show up early before the draft. I don't want to do it twice during the day, so let's just show up I don't know how much we want to show up early because that's going to be a long draft.
That's going to be a long day. We can talk about all these things during the draft. There's always time, right?
Yeah.
We can do news. We can do what have you.
Yeah.
Maybe, but in an auction though, you have to pay attention. I have to pay it. You don't have to pay attention. You don't you can tune out as much as you want. I'm going to pay attention. So,
So
here's I'm just going to be eating relish.
Here's my biggest question. Is the auction going to take longer now that we have 9 bench spots now? 12 teams, 9 bench spots?
Yes, it will. 12 teams and 9. Yes, it will. It'll take longer.
It's still $200 because that's going to change a lot on how different people are going to go for.
What if I did this? What if I added what if I take away a bench spot and put IR spot instead? Would that help?
No, don't. Well, how many bench spots are there currently?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh my gosh.
8.
Oh.
8. There are 8 currently, I believe.
Yeah. In that case, then because at 7 we will still have more than a regular league, and we've got 2 more teams, so it's going to be thinner. So no more than 7 bench spots. Yeah.
And then for regular roster, so are we removing the kicker then and adding another one, or just remove the kicker outright? What are we doing?
I don't care.
I'm just gonna get rid of the kicker outright.
Okay.
Yeah, because we already have 2 flexes, I think.
And we're doing fab for
Yeah.
waivers. Okay.
Yeah, although
Oh.
there were a couple options for
That's
that.
new.
There were a couple options. It was like, but it was like tiebreaker. Does the tiebreaker go to, I don't know. So I just went with whatever. And I looked normal.
Yeah, well, this will be interesting.
allowed?
Auto draft.
Oh, no, it's not. And you're banned. I'm just kidding. You're always welcome here. Thomas H., you guys are always welcome here. Ryan and MathQuest, Luca Hayda. You guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Huh?
Ben Father and Sam, too. They joined us as well.
Oh, yeah. Ben was here. Sam. I missed a bunch of guys. Oh, Jerry and Charlie. There's so many people we have to thank. I thank you guys for the good conversation. But we're going to have... Oh, before we go, though, there is one last